If you've ever sat at an airport gate watching a sea of airplanes taxi toward the runway, you've undoubtedly seen this silhouette dozens of times. It's that familiar sharp-nosed twinjet with a distinctively flattened bottom on its engine cowlings. It looks like the generic blueprint of a modern airliner. This is the Boeing 737, and for decades it was undisputed title holder of the most produced commercial jetliner ever made. The bizarre thing is, if you look at a brand new one rolling out of the factory today, its cabin width and fuselage design are identical to the version that took flight back in 1967. Think about that for a second. Cars from 1967 are vintage museum pieces with carburetors and AM radios. Computers back then were the size of refrigerators and ran on magnetic tape. Yet this exact airframe layout just kept ruling the skies. To understand why, you have to realize that short-range airline travel in the mid-20th century was incredibly clunky. Back in the 1960s, regional jets usually slapped their engines on the tail. It seemed logical, but it meant the back of the plane was deafeningly loud, seating was cramped, and because the tail was so high, ground crews at small-town airports needed massive ladders and specialized cranes just to load bags or fix a valve. Boeing decided to break the mold. They hung the engines directly under the wings, but slammed the entire plane down incredibly low to the ground. Then, they gave it the exact same wide, 6-seat across cabin as their massive transatlantic 707. Suddenly, regional passengers got the spacious feel of a giant airliner, while baggage handlers at tiny city airports could literally chuck suitcases into the cargo hold by hand, standing right on the tarmac. That was the masterstroke. Almost overnight, the order books exploded. A 737 cost roughly $3 million back then, a tiny fraction of the price of a massive wide-body jet. Airlines realized they could buy a fleet of these workhorses and connect smaller, underserved hometowns all across the globe. It wasn't just for luxury travelers anymore. It was for budget startups and regional commuters. It turned flying from an elite luxury into an everyday utility. Before long, an aggressive feedback loop kicked in that made it virtually impossible for any competitor to dethrone the 737. Airlines bought them because the low-slung design meant ground crews could turn the plane around at the gate in record time. Pilots flocked to those airlines because a 737 type rating guaranteed them job security anywhere on Earth. An army of mechanics grew up knowing the machine inside and out. Spare parts networks became as common as auto parts stores. Because the infrastructure was already there, operating costs plummeted. This made the plane cheaper to lease, which caused more airlines to buy it, which created a demand for more pilots, and the machine just fed itself for decades. Through the 1980s, 90s, and 2000s, Boeing heavily modernized the jet. They swapped in digital glass cockpits, added high-efficiency engines, and bolted on advanced winglets. But they fiercely guarded the core blueprint. They kept the same fuselage diameter and the same basic mechanical DNA. It was a reliable, predictable workhorse. Because there were so many of them in the air, this everyday airliner inevitably found itself surviving some of the most harrowing moments in aviation history. In 1988, an Aloha Airlines 737 suffered an explosive decompression at 24,000 feet, tearing away a massive section of the upper fuselage. The plane literally became a convertible in the sky. Yet, despite holding together a shredded airframe in freezing, violent winds, the pilots successfully brought the plane down. That very same year, a Tucker Airlines 737 lost both engines while flying straight through a severe thunderstorm over New Orleans. With zero thrust, the pilots glided the massive jet onto a narrow, unpaved grass levee next to a NASA facility. Not a single person was seriously hurt. Engineers literally swapped out the engines right there on the grass. And a few weeks later, a pilot used that same dirt strip to fly the plane away. By the late 2010s, the 737 was an unstoppable juggernaut. And then, the entire legacy nearly unraveled. It happened because Boeing tried to push an old design past its physical limits. To compete with Airbus's newer, hyper-efficient models, Boeing needed to mount massive new engines onto the 737 MAX. But because the 737 was designed in the 60s to sit incredibly close to the ground, the giant new engines couldn't fit under the wings. Boeing's workaround was to mount the engines further forward and higher up. This shifted the plane's aerodynamics, causing the nose to pitch upward under certain conditions. To fix this, without forcing airlines into expensive, time-consuming simulator retraining for their pilots, Boeing quietly installed a software system called MCAS to automatically push the nose back down. Tragically, faulty sensors triggered the software erroneously, leading to 2 catastrophic accidents. The aircraft was grounded worldwide. Production froze. It was a historic, reputation-shattering crisis for Boeing. The world's most successful jetliner was banned from the skies for nearly 2 years. Getting it back required an unprecedented level of global scrutiny. Engineers didn't just patch the software, they completely overhauled the flight control architecture, added redundant sensor checks, and entirely rewrote pilot training protocols. It wasn't a quick fix. It was a grueling, multi-year process driven by intense pressure from devastated families, furious airline executives, and skeptical regulators worldwide. In late 2020, the skies finally reopened to the jet. It was a brutal, humbling lesson in safety engineering, but the overhauled aircraft gradually earned its way back into mass global service. Today, objectively superior options exist. The Airbus A220 offers a far quieter, more modern cabin experience. The Airbus A320 family was built from day one with a taller stance, meaning it accommodates massive modern engines naturally, allowing the longer-range A321neo to dominate the transatlantic market. Yet, global airlines still buy the 737 by the hundreds. The reason comes down to the exact same logic behind the QWERTY keyboard layout on your phone or laptop. It isn't the most ergonomic or efficient layout possible. Better designs have been engineered. But because every school teaches it, every office uses it, and every device manufactures it, the collective cost of switching to something better is simply too high. That is the ultimate power of the 737. There are over 11,000 of them out there. Virtually every commercial pilot is familiar with its layout. Every airport mechanic has the tools to fix it. Every major hub holds its spare parts. To completely abandon it, an airline would have to retrain thousands of crew members, throw out millions of dollars in proprietary maintenance gear, and completely disrupt their logistics. A competitor doesn't just have to be slightly better, it has to be so revolutionary that it justifies tearing down a global ecosystem. A brand new 737 MAX today will run an airline roughly $100 million. Even when you adjust for decades of inflation, it is drastically more expensive than its original ancestor. Yet airlines will willingly wait in line for years just to get one. It's no longer just a product line. It is the invisible infrastructure that holds the modern aviation world together.